Recently, a study was published and widely publicized into the effectiveness of a 4-day work week compared to a 5-day work week. And a lot of discussion has been taking place over the results, which seem to show that the people participating in the study were no less productive in 4 days than they were in 5 days of a single week. This has been used as evidence to promote the move on whole of working from 5 days, as we usually do, with 2 days as a weekend, to 4 days as the standard week worked. A lot of the reasons used to explain this phenomenon, the productivity of people being equivalent in 4 days compared to 5 days, is that, well, for one thing, the work that you have to do, it has a tendency to inflate to fill the amount of space given, the amount of time assigned to it. I know I'm not the first person to observe that if you work in an office environment or you work around other people a lot in a sort of white-collar job, there seems to be a lot of time that is wasted, or seems to be wasted. Things like getting coffee, standing at the water cooler, reading emails that don't really matter, going to meetings that you don't really need, going to HR workshops and things that are apparently, they may be somewhat useful in some capacity and not completely useless, but they are certainly not part of the core work that you are producing. They're not part of the core value that you're there to provide, whereas my experience of working in factories in more sort of blue-collar professions is that people do spend every minute of their work day actually working, where they are working with their hands, they're building things. There may be a bonus for reaching a certain quota, which encourages people to work pretty diligently. I mean, if you go to a McDonald's and see what they're doing there behind the counter, there's really not much sitting around or chatting. It's just they just work flat out until they get a brief break, or a lunch at the end of their shift. So if you take a job like that, where you're working in a factory or in a service industry, by which I mean if you work in McDonald's or Tesco, you're obviously not going to get more done in 4 days than you can in 5, because those people are working flat out. And if I had a job like that, and I read this study about office workers getting more work done in 4 days than they would in 5, that I think I would find that quite insulting, that these people who are making, these people with degrees who are making more money are actually not working very hard. That would be quite a depressing finding. It may mean that you're being more perfectionist. You're able to put more sort of finishing touches on this or that task, whether it be writing reports or emails, or if you work in some kind of creative process, you can just put those tiny little finishing touches on that you could really do without, that don't actually add any value. Or it could be, as some people suggested, that extra day of weekend that people were getting was allowing them to be that much more rested and ready to work when their weekend was over. So they were able to pack more into the 4 days they were working, because they had more energy, more creativity, and they were generally happier people who could do better work. A lot of the participants in the study did end up working more hours on the days that they did work. Not enough that it would make up for a whole extra day of work, but more hours than they usually would on a given day. So the total number of hours in the week was still less than the 5-day week, but it was slightly more than they usually would do in those 4 days. But still, there is something quite counterintuitive about the idea that you could get more done in 4 days than you can in 5. And I have to say that rather than finding this encouraging and getting excited for the idea of a 4-day work week, it is contributing to this feeling I have in general, this pessimism of what we as a country or as a culture are able to achieve. Because if you're able to do more work in 4 days than you can in 5, I have to there's a part of me that thinks that just must be down to people not being very productive in 5 days. If you can get the same amount done in 4, then really you can't have been working very hard on this when you were working 5 days. But what really concerns me is what this says about our economy looking forward into the future. What I fear, which is something I've heard other people talking about as well, is just that we as a country, as a sort of intellectual powerhouse of the world, we have a lot of these like laptop class of people whose contribution to the world economy isn't what they're building or what they're sort of making with their hands, but they're contributing ideas. They're writing emails and reports, and they're doing design work. And what has been happening is that, as we all know, manufacturing has moved abroad to a huge extent over the past few decades, where factories are opening up in the Far East. They're opening up in the Czech Republic, and they build all of our things. And a lot of our food production has also moved abroad, but that's what we call like the sort of the absolute lowest skill work that can be done abroad has been moved abroad already. But this sort of the ceiling of what is achievable in this sort of outsourcing is slowly rising, where it's becoming more and more high-skilled work that's been sent abroad. And we, in my own profession, which is engineering, we see a lot of other countries now doing the design work, not just manufacturing the goods, but also doing the basic design part of that process. And of course, it's because it's cheaper. And I really can't speak to how productive people in other countries are when they're doing this work. I get the sense, I can guess that perhaps they're a bit more productive than we are in this country, based on studies like this that show that we're only doing 4 days of work in our week. I believe that a lot of the intellectual prestige of the United Kingdom and England and London in particular is warranted. You know, we do have a lot of human capital here, a lot of smart people with degrees who are productive and can can create a lot of value, add a lot of value to companies, to processes, and make the world better with their brains. But I also believe that a lot of that prestige is earned off of the achievements of the generations that came before us, and not necessarily the generation that currently exists. So we have these prestigious institutions like the Oxford and Cambridge University, for instance. These universities are very well regarded all over the world, and the graduates from those universities are very highly valued by people in other countries and by companies in this country as well. But looking at the cultures of these institutions now and the quality of graduates they're producing, I don't think I can continue to say that prestige is still warranted, that they deserve that prestige based on what they're doing now, what is currently being produced there. The same goes for the rest of the country, I think, perhaps to a lesser extent. I work in an engineering consultancy where we get a lot of business from other countries, where these countries could be going anywhere in the world for this design work, for this engineering work, and yet they come to an English company to get English engineers. And it's obviously that is based on the merit of the company that I work for and my colleagues, but it's also based a little bit on the merit of the country and the reputation of Britain and of England as a place where good engineers might come from. As the quality of engineers and the productivity of the engineers in this country starts to decline, I think other countries are going to start to clue into the fact that we're charging more money for less productivity than engineers, say, in China or India or Czech Republic. And slowly we're going to see that work slipping away from us, and we, as a country, we don't really produce things, we produce ideas and intellectual work. So once we start to lose that, we don't have the infrastructure to start going back to the low skilled work. What we have is a lot of people with degrees who are set up to do highly skilled idea intellectual work, and yet because they're so highly paid, I think we're just going to be priced out of the market soon. People are going to go to countries that are just as intellectually capable as us, but cheaper. And as I said already, that has started to happen to a limited degree. If we move to a 4-day work week, I can only imagine that, if I were a German company or a Swiss company or an American company, and I heard that everyone in the UK only works 4 days a week, I think I'd probably rather not use a company that works in the UK, because I just think, what are they doing? They're just taking these 3-day weekends. Like, I want my work done quickly. I want it done well. I don't want it half-assed or done. I don't want them to take 20% longer to finish my jobs. I'm very much against the 4-day work week. That's not to say that part-time workers are necessarily a bad thing, but if an entire company moves to 4 days, or if the entire country moves to 4 days, I think that's something I would really dread. The effects of that, I think, would not be good. So that's just my thoughts. I know I don't usually do videos about business and about the economy, so do take this with a pinch of salt. If you think I'm wrong, or if you know more about the subject than I do, then please let me know in the comments. So I'd love to be educated, but that's just how I see things based on my experience in the field of engineering and my experience with white-collar workers. So thank you very much for watching. Watch Whammon Hour Fridays at, I think it's going to be Fridays at 8:30 going forward now, so slightly new time. I hope you'll be able to catch us then, and have a good day. I'll see you again soon.